In the early 1980s, during the Reagan administration, the United States and Britain, under Margaret Thatcher, sought to deploy a new generation of theater nuclear missiles in Europe to counter the new Soviet SS-22 nuclear missiles. Many Europeans feared that their countries were in danger of becoming the battleground of a limited nuclear war fought between the United States and the USSR. The Greenham Women's Peace Camp movement mobilized thousands of protesters, mostly women and children, in an effort to surround the U.S. base and prevent the cruise missiles from being deployed. Thus began the longest continuous mass peace protest in history that eventually prevented the missiles from being fully deployed. The Women's Peace Camp at Greenham Common, England, claimed that they were being attacked by U.S. electronic weapons from within the U.S. air base there. They believed that some form of electromagnetic wave or some other signal was being directed at them and responsible for a number of illnesses they suffered over the years. Symptoms ranged from mild headaches and drowsiness to bouts of temporary paralysis, and in one case an apparent circulatory failure which required emergency treatment. The women complained of sharp pains and problems with speech and coordination. A team of doctors from the Medical Campaign Against Nuclear Weapons compiled a report on the condition of the women. The women first noticed a pattern of illness that emerged in 1984. They discounted food and water poisoning as causes and suspected interference from inside the base. The doctors found that the women at different points around the camp appeared to have experienced similar symptoms at the same time, even though they were not in contact with one another. They believed that there was a deliberate intent to make life difficult for them and to drive them away from their protest. Some of the worst affected women now find it impossible to stay around the air base for more than a short period of time. The women at Greenham Commons suspected that more than one type of frequency of radiation was being used against them, and said that the symptoms varied from time to time and seemed to reflect what was taking place on the base. Large numbers of women have complained of sudden feelings of extreme tiredness shortly before major events such as the departure of cruise missile convoys and other occasions when their activities and protests may have proved awkward for the forces using the base. Electronics Today conducted a number of tests around the base in cooperation with journalists from other organizations, and the readings taken with a wide-range signal strength meter showed sharp increases in the background signal level near one of the women's camps at a time when they claimed to be experiencing ill effects. On another occasion, previously low signal levels near the camp rose sharply when the women created a disturbance just outside the perimeter fence of the base. Whether this had indicated an attempt to subdue the women by electronic means or was merely the use of radar system surveillance is impossible to say. The signal levels measured were well above normal background levels, but still within official safety limits. However, there is evidence from a number of sources that low levels of electromagnetic radiation can have harmful effects, especially when exposure takes place over a long period of time. British defense officials denied that there was any form of electric signal being used against the protesters. Kim Beasley of the Greenham Common Women's Peace Camp has compiled a fairly extensive catalog of effects that have resulted from low-frequency signals emanating from the U.S. base, apparently targeted at the women protesters. These include vertigo, retinal bleeding, burnt face even at night, nausea, sleep disturbances, palpitations, loss of concentration, loss of memory, disorientation, severe headaches, temporary paralysis, faulty speech coordination, irritability, and a sense of panic in non-panic situations. Identical and similar effects have been reported elsewhere and appear to be fairly commonplace amongst so-called victims. Many of these symptoms seem to be associated in medical literature with exposure to microwaves, and especially through low-intensity or non-thermal exposure. These effects have been reviewed by Dr. Robert Becker, twice nominated for the Nobel Prize, and a specialist in electromagnetic effects. His report confirms that the symptoms mirror those he would expect to see had microwaves been deployed and tested upon large numbers of people. In September of 1998, a lawsuit brought by the International Committee on Offensive Microwave Weapons was dismissed in the U.S. District Court in Washington, D.C. Quote, "We were asking the court to enforce a presidential memorandum which bans involuntary research on human subjects," said the group's director, Harlan Gerard. The Philadelphia-based organization had alleged that the Department of Defense and the Central Intelligence Agency have conducted such experiments in their efforts to develop weapons systems using electromagnetic frequencies, lasers, microwaves, and sound waves. The judge ruled that the group did not have standing to bring suit because the people alleged to have suffered from such testing were not members of Harlan Gerard's organization. The judge acknowledged that Gerard himself was a member, but stated that his own complaints were, quote, "too generalized and nonspecific to support a complaint," unquote. Gerard stated that his organization could not afford an appeal, and he said the committee plans to raise the matter with the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. A new report from the Coalition Against Torture and Racial Discrimination, an alliance of 15 U.S. human rights groups, states that Harlan Gerard's lawsuit deserves closer attention. Quote, "Given the past history of secret experimentation by the government," the anti-torture group declares, "these allegations of continuing and ongoing government-sponsored human testing using electromagnetic weapons and radio frequency weapons should not be dismissed without more thorough, impartial investigation," unquote.